What's up, world? This is Raul with Live Loud, coming at you guys again with another episode of Say It Loud. Today, I'm really excited because I have one of my dearest, closest friends who's really been a special light in my life. And now, shoot, we get to talk in front of many, many people and tell your stories and how you got to where you are. Let me let you know right before we jump into this thing that every single episode that I recorded up until now, I've thought about you as like, am I speaking clearly? Am I upright? Am I chest open? So Minna, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, Raul, you're one of my humans, man. I'm so excited to be here. And although I wish we could be in person, I think it's pretty remarkable that we have this technology that allows us to stay connected. And really, for me, it's given me an opportunity to embrace in such an intentional way my global community. And I think we all have now the space and are feeling a strong intention to really reinvest in those relationships. So this is cool. I hope to see you soon, but this is amazing. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, for sure. I love it because I feel you very charismatic when you do your posts and doing what you do, which we'll get into in a second. But it's even more fun to know that when I see you face to face, I get the same energy, if not more, just crazy silliness and playfulness. And it's so rich, man. It's so rich. So why don't you tell people who you are and what you manifest on your greatness on that side?
Well, I would say that I am an innately silly person. I play is at the essence of my being. And so, yeah, what you see is what you get across all platforms. I say, live your truth, speak your truth, be your truth unapologetically all the time, as long as it's coming from love, right? As long as there's no intention of harm, just like live in your space. And I take that on. That's how I engage with my life. And really I was able to cultivate that in a way that was not, because I think sometimes we think of play as reckless, or we think of play as silly, or we think of play as non-strategic. Mm-hmm. And so I studied as an actor. I went to NYU Tisch, and then I got my master's degree in acting. And what that allowed me is to harness the essence that you're speaking about, which is this sort of, energy of presence and immediacy and being responsive and listening deeply. I was able to harness that and place it in a container that allowed me to, in a theater perspective and an acting perspective, move into my work in a way that was really deep and authentic and meaningful. And then being able to translate that into not only the way that I operated, but also being able to support others and how they were able to live in their truth, speak up, share their voice, feel intentional, pursue an objective, and do that in a way that felt like they had a deep level of agency in terms of the outcomes that they could anticipate. And so I do that through my company, which is Energize Your Voice. So I lead with play, I teach play, I live play. It is what I do in my life.
Yeah. So I love that I got to experience Energize Your Voice firsthand when you actually came down to Brazil and to work with the team out there. So how was it, or in what ways do you work with people?
What we did down in Brazil, which is, so to give people a sense, I don't know if they have a sense of what you were doing down in Brazil or what that organization is, but essentially what we did with that team and what we do with other teams is pretty consistent, which is helping people understand how to bridge content to communication, whatever that is. So if that's in a networking scenario, how do you understand who you are, what you're about, why you're doing what you're doing, and then ultimately not only how to communicate that effectively with a level of presence, confidence, and authenticity, but then also how to engage in that dialogue in a way that feels inspired and memorable. So how can you incite curiosity to invite further conversation? And that's really where fundamentals of storytelling come in. So we first start with the body and the voice and presence, and how are you showing up, and how comfortable do you feel in stillness, and how grounded do you feel in moments when you might still feel nervous? How have skills and tools to allow you to still move forward with a sense of presence and objective.
Mm-hmm.
And then we invite some embodied practices. So we do a lot of experiential training. So play-based and improv-based and performance-based and breath-based and body-based, how do you get out? So it's like, once you understand the internal system of breath and presence and simplicity, how do you then bring that out in a way that still feels authentic, but feels very expressive and feels like it can command attention rather than feeling a responsibility to demand attention. And so that's really the framework that we use. And then on top of that, no matter who we're working with, we'll customize, those are the broad oversweeping goals, but we'll customize. People have, not to get too granular from an organizational perspective, but you can look at leadership and how do they scale executive presence into their teams. You can look at junior level employees, how do they step into organizational culture in a way that allows them to stay open, stay curious, keep learning, but also establish themselves as a vital element to that organization. Working with individuals on keynote creation and presentation. So it really runs the gamut, but at the core of it is body, it's exploration, it's creative thinking, it's agility training, and it's authenticity.
Yeah, that's so amazing. One of the things that I really love about that is that whether you're working with an organization with multiple people to the individual people who make up that body, right? Because it's not just the body, it's those individuals who make up that body. And for them to be empowered, not just in their business and what they're articulating, but hone their power as storytellers, as being able to authentically communicate what's going on for them. I could just imagine the impact it makes when they go home and when they get to interact with their partners or their family.
It's really cool to see people. So for example, I had a client for a while and she worked at a digital news agency. She's retired actually. And she and I worked together, and I remember there were two key points, sort of mile marks in terms of her transformation. The first one was she was in ad sales. She'd been working in ad sales for a really long time. This organization had a presentation deck, like a sales deck that everybody had to use. And so she was a seasoned veteran in the space, and she was just feeling like her numbers weren't where they should be, or she wasn't feeling as confident about it. And what we discovered was she had become so habituated toward this sales deck that she was no longer living presently in it. Not only that, she had not even considered to give herself permission to move, to vary the pitch in a way that felt not only authentically representative of her voice, not only the organization's voice, but her voice, which would allow her to step more confidently into that conversation. But then how to incorporate stories, how to go off script a little bit while staying on track. Yeah. And that moment of giving her permission to find her own language to present these topics was totally transformative for her. And then once we found her feeling a little bit more agile in that space, then it was about, okay, let's really level up your expressiveness in that and find your voice, your literal voice, in more strong, dynamic ways. And she ultimately ended up joining a singing group. And wow. because for her, and she was like, I go home and I'm happier. I'm engaged in a way that feels so easy and free. Because Raul, if we think about it, the breath flows naturally. We don't have to do anything to do it, right? The breath can also stop naturally. And that's where we have to come in and override those signals. And that usually happens in a moment when we're feeling compromised or fearful or in a deep level of uncertainty, sort of those trenches of despair potentially. Yeah. And our breath stops. Some people might be feeling that right now as they're sitting at home and navigating these waters of uncertainty. How do you really come back to the body? And so what this woman was experiencing is, if I liberate my breath, if I liberate my body, if I liberate my voice around that, and then if I liberate my brain to feel agile and how it wants to respond to what's in front of me, it's so much easier and it's fun, and it's a creative problem solving rather than, or a puzzle solving rather than a crisis intervention, right? And then it can become playful. And she really discovered, like, oh man, there's a lot available to me once I surrender myself to possibility rather than relegating myself to a space of imposed perfection.
Yeah. That's right there. The permission to be authentic and to always be coming from that place, yet still stay aligned with the purpose and the intention of what you're actually communicating is really, really powerful. I loved seeing you work with even Flo, for a shout out to Flo if you're listening right now.
Hello, he's one of my humans.
Yeah, and it was so great because it's not just language coming from a cranial place, right? Language is not just your brain comes to your mouth and that's it. It's so embodied, and there's so
well. Here's what I'll say about that. You are absolutely right. And here's one thing I want people to consider in relationship to that concept. So we can have a thought, right? The thought exists in us before it's expressed. Now, the thought may start here, but the thought is built in terms of communication from deep, right? We can think about it from the root chakra or like the lower belly area, right? When you're feeling like, ooh, I need something to say, you're like, ah, right? And it starts from deep below. So the thought, it travels all the way up here. And then until it's right here, right at the threshold of the mouth, it's still just a thought. Right? So in order to then allow that thought to have as much power as you want it to, how you're expressing the voice, how you're constructing the sounds of your thought will ultimately allow you to be more in control of your thought and allow your thoughts to be executed in the way in which you intended.
Right. Which is such a powerful tool, right? How many of us feel something, but not quite sure how to articulate, how to express it? A big problem that happens within businesses to within partnerships to with anyone is, how do I articulate myself in a healthy way that's productive towards what I actually want to cause? And so I would imagine honing that power to be conscious about what goes on in your mind, to your body, to all of that, being able to articulate that in real time. It's such an awesome thing to say. So how did this all happen that you started working with people to get them there? How did this all occur?
It was a series of events that sort of built on one another. Like I said, I started as an actor and I did that for a really long time. And when after undergrad, after NYU, and then after graduate school, I was a coach. I was coaching accent reduction and presentation skills because phonetics is one of my specialties. And I just happened to get looped into a tutoring company, and they were like, oh, this would be a great thing for corporate clients. And I was like, correct. So they started sending me out on that. And this was just a support job in my mind to pursue acting, right? Understanding how all of these tools, breath, speech, voice, analysis, objective, all supported my acting. And then not really understanding the power that could have on individuals, not just artists. And so as I was engaged in this accent reduction process, I realized people aren't able to express what we call voiced final consonants. And I know that sounds like a small thing, but essentially they're arresting the ends of the words. So I'm not hearing the whole word, which means you're not completely committing to the thought, which means you're doing disservice to your listener and you're not fully committed to what it is that you're saying. And so when I identified that for people, they couldn't even have the breath to have the voice. They couldn't wrap their heads around what that meant. And I could see this deep yearning to want to understand and embody what that experience was. And so that sort of got me on this journey of, okay, there's something deeper happening here with people where they're so disconnected from the voice, from the body when it comes to communication and the power, the absolute power that holds for them. So I started building my practice and evolving my practice, eventually started getting asked to do group corporate trainings on presentation skills. I was like, how do I do that? So I use improv and acting technique, which is proven to be a very effective methodology And then it got to the point where I was getting asked to do so much, and I had so many support jobs at that time. I was doing so many different things, as cleaning houses and walking dogs and teaching kickboxing. And it got to the point where I just was like, okay, I need to make a decision here. And then I booked a national commercial, and it allowed me to have sort of the financial permission in my mind to quit all of my other support jobs and just say, okay, let me go full time into Energize Your Voice. This is going to be the thing that sustains my acting career. And because there was a need for it, a distinct need. That process in of itself was one that took a long time, but the biggest outcome initially that came from me deciding to start Energize Your Voice full time, out of this determined need for people to really understand how to leverage their voice in the most powerful way possible in a business context, personal context, but definitely business context. I realized that I love acting. I love performing. Obviously, I was really good at it, but the impact potential there was not, in my mind, what I needed to feel like I was contributing something that felt valuable. And so over the first 6 months of starting my business, I just realized, wow, I feel so much more on purpose when I'm teaching than when I'm acting. When I'm acting, it's so fun, but that purpose piece was not there. And so I was in the process of starting my business, went through a very similar process that I would assume some of my clients do, which is once you understand how liberating it can be to own your voice, to own your truth, to stand behind that, even in the face of uncertainty and fear and unclear outcome, stepping into that, you don't need to know the end. You just have to take that. You have to honor the ignition point. And I was able to do that. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah. So what was that like because was there struggle or was there moments that you have doubted into this business?
I pursued this very similarly to how I pursued acting, very strategically, very thoughtfully, with a total growth entrepreneurship mindset. But just like acting, every like 6 or 8 months, I'm like, what am I doing? What have I done? And then I think maybe I should get a real job. I've never worked for a company. So I think, okay, maybe I should like quit it all. What am I doing? This is so ridiculous. So they're always, it's an ebb and flow, always. But I think this moment is one of those. And we're really looking at it as an opportunity to incubate and experiment, which, is challenging, it's scary, it's overwhelming, and it also leads me to, is it worth it? Yeah. Of course that comes into my mind. What am I doing? My team is standing by me. Feel a grave responsibility to them. Am I doing them a disservice? So there's a lot of moral and ethical questions around this, but then I always have to come back to, I believe in what we're doing. I believe in its impact potential, and then just come back to the idea of solution orientation and puzzle solving.
Right. There's an alignment that happens there when you ask yourself in these different things, from your voice to your intention to your impact to all these things that kind of funnel that. But that doesn't mean that doubts doesn't occur, or that hesitation or fear doesn't occur. There's so many people that I've interacted with when they talk about my travels or my business, and it's like, oh yeah, I wish I could do that, but I'm just too afraid, or I'm not sure what I would be able to do. So that permission to actually explore what that might be, and to know that this isn't just a climb and, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I have my business. All is done. All is solved.
Nailed it. Got my LLC. I'm all set.
Yeah. Right. Take the rest of the year off. We're good for now. What'd you do next year? I launched my business. So yeah, there's a lot of that occurs, but if we tap into our alignment with all those things, from our mission, our why, the rewards that we're getting to it, the idea that we can stay committed to that above what things might burden us or our struggles that we might like endure in that process. As you know, like I have a background as a designer. I wanted to be a designer since I was 5 years old. So to pursue that and to go back to school for that and accumulate debt and start working for a company, so now I'm sitting on a bucket of debt. I'm like, let me launch a business now. Right. So it's like that, because it was that moment of what you just said of, this is what I enjoy, this is what fuels me, and it aligns with the impact that I'm making out there. As a designer, I know I could make impact as a designer, not to say that you can't, but what I was doing, it was fulfilling on a self version of it, but the side of spreading it to other people just wasn't present until I really leaped in and created my business, where I got to incorporate all my loves and be willing to go through that journey with that.
Well, and I think what's really important to recognize here is both you and I have pursued this path from an entrepreneurial perspective. Mm-hmm. It's really important to realize that you can be equally as innovative and equally as impactful within an organizational structure. And it's about first of all, gaining a network of advocates who are the people that believe in what it is that you're doing, and then find a pathway to enact that. And also, when you're seeking out a position at an organization, how value aligned are they to what you are looking to achieve? Is it something that what are your non-negotiables? Can you compromise your boundaries? Can you compromise values? It's something really worthwhile to consider. Those are the places where you're going to thrive. Those are the places where you are going to perceive the most impact potential, because you feel like you have a voice and you feel like you can live fully and be accepted and celebrated for all of those different elements that you can bring to the table.
Absolutely. So right now that people are on quarantine and people are forced to kind of step away, a lot of people are in this space of redefining their transformation on what's now, right? The majority of them, God willingly, are going to return to their jobs if that's what they choose, if that's what they want. But some people, even that have that opportunity, I'm finding, oh, this is an opportunity to redefine and reflect on what's really important. So for those people who are home right now and looking to what they can distribute their time and energy, what would you suggest people can be taking this opportunity for?
I think it's going to depend a lot on what you're curious about. I would say this is an opportunity with all this time when you come face to face with boredom on a consistent basis. What are you called to invest your time in? Mm-hmm. If you're watching a lot of Netflix, is that checkout, or are you thinking critically? For example, I can't, and this is from my acting background, but I cannot watch a show without discerning the acting techniques, looking at the camera angles, like the whole thing. But like, where are you really investing your time? And I think now's the opportunity to, if you've always been curious what it was like to be an influencer, we'll start creating content. Have you always been curious about what it's like to be a public speaker? Start creating content. Do you want to be a copywriter? Reach out to some people and see if you can support them in what they're doing. I think this is an enormous opportunity to engage deeply in generosity around where your curiosities lie. Mm-hmm. There will be people, if you don't have a background, or if you don't necessarily have the credentials to pursue immediately what it is you're looking to do, there are a lot of people that would be willing to take on some support, especially if it's for free. So it's a win-win for each person involved, and it's going to give you an opportunity to gain some really clarifying information. Like, is this what I want to do? And so I'd say now's the time to really dip your toe in a bunch of different pools, see what feels inspiring to you. And that may ultimately just reinforce the fact that, actually, I like working for Pfizer, and I'm just going to go back and do that in 2 months. Or it might say, I really like working for Pfizer, but I also realize I'm an incredible content creator. I've got a super knack for it. Maybe there's opportunity to leverage that within the company, either move laterally or create a whole new initiative for them, right? So there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah. Going back to your first point on being able to redefine tapping into your authenticity while staying on purpose and on track. I think right now, you're a testament to this. I see you as you are growing in your business and developing even more, that we have this thing with coronavirus and having to put on stop. And now we're redefining how we're doing things, right? This is such an awesome time that we could build the levels in our own businesses or in our own practices, in our own rituals for our health and wellness, to develop it to another level, right? And have that time and bandwidth to be able to do so. And at the same time, distribute our time to how we choose to, our family, our kids, or whatever it is in your reality. But just because we have this moment that for a lot of us, myself included, business has been like, whoop, we're going to close the doors for a little bit. It's like, all right, cool. Now that
as an events industry driven organization, we are feeling that as well.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, so I'm not going to be able to show up my camera. Everyone set up your iPhones. I'm going to consult with how do you do this, but take this time to grow and play and learn and explore. There's so much in our reality that can really use our services right now. And we have such an opportunity to be able to do so. And so, Minna, I really love you tons, man. I love to see people working with you because I know they're in such great hands. Why don't you drop some handles on where people can find you if they need support in developing their business or whatever that might be?
Yeah, for sure. I think people would probably come to us because, especially on our Instagram, it's just Energize Your Voice, or you can follow me at Minna Taylor _EYV, which is the founders page. But we'll always be posting great content in terms of little tips or learning moments or really thoughtful bubbles of inspiration. I think if you're just looking for an access point to get positive, growth-oriented content, you should definitely direct yourself there. If you want more information about coaching, if you work for an organization and you feel like, dang, we could really use some support around leveling up voice and speech and virtual presentation and communication skills, I would direct you to our website, which is energizeyourvoice.net. And you can contact us there, but that'll give you a general overview over what our programming is. Also knowing that we have completely pivoted everything online at this point, which fortunately for us was something we were already in the process of doing. So it didn't feel as though we had to completely build new infrastructure. But anybody that needs support, we can do virtual. And then hopefully when it comes back, we can meet one another in the flesh.
Yes. As a storyteller, I know the importance of not just knowing what I have to say, but how the heck do I say it, right? How do I put it in the world? And I do it behind the camera and you do it face to face with people to let them discover something in themselves that they might not have known up until now. So,
ooh, I love that. That's exactly it, right? It's like, and that's why we say discover your full voice, unlock your full potential, because it's like, it's already in you, dude. It's already there. It's not something you need to be like, how do I vocalize? Or like, what is my intuition? Like, it freaking exists. We are born storytellers. And I think you allow people to do that in a way that is visually compelling. And we do that in a way that is verbally compelling and vocally compelling. And it's already there. We just help you hone it and then execute it in a way that feels so authentically representative of who you essentially know yourself to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Minna, thanks again. Thank you so much. I always look forward to just being in your presence, but especially now, you were one of the first people that I'm like, ooh, I want her to tell her story, because just the way you talk, the way you communicate, and the way you support other people and how you inspire me to be able to go and speak. I notice how much I mumble and I think about you and I'm like, oh yeah, she'd probably be calling me out right now.
I watch all of your content. I'm like, damn it, Raul, get it together.
And meanwhile, I'm on the other side. I'm like, why that camera angle? Why that lighting? No, it doesn't work. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone else tuning in, please follow her if you want to check out more information. If you want to learn a bunch of things, I know she works and she puts on blast a lot of other people with different industries that you really might be interested in listening to.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We have an amazing network. If you're looking for support in any area, coaching, training, mindset, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, we have sales, we've got the people. So also consider me a resource in that capacity.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, guys. So stay tuned to more episodes of Say It Loud. where we get to hear more stories from incredible, incredible people near and far. And we'll tune in next time. Much love.
Bye.